The Tribe podcast show is a production of Kangaroo Fern Media Lab, which is all about supporting you to start and build a thriving business. Tribe podcast on AusPod Syndicate.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode. We really appreciate you joining us. This podcast really shows us how we can all learn, live, and thrive off of each other. By sharing our knowledge through our conversations, we will impart some knowledge whilst learning ourselves how to progress even further. Here is your host.
For this episode of Tribe Podcast Show, our guest is the founder and the CEO of PodKai Media, a podcast marketing agency in the Philippines. We'll talk about women and business and how it all started for her. Let's welcome Kai Villanueva.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Who is Kai Villanueva?
Who am I? Okay, I'm a podcast strategist for almost 4 years. I started out as a social media strategist and I studied at Social Media Academy. That's an online school here in the Philippines. And now I'm a part of the Freelancing Tribe community. And yeah, I cater to different podcasts locally and internationally. And I help them grow and build their brand through podcasting, and I help them monetize it.
Looks fantastic. So, you are the owner of PodKai. So, how did PodKai started?
So yeah, I own PodKai Media, and actually, when I started out as I started as a podcast editor. So back then, I did not have any idea about podcasting. I was working at an online company as a general VA, and I was given different tasks until they gave me a task for podcasting to edit. So that's when it started. They gave it to me. They also didn't know how to do it. So I had to study on my own. I checked YouTube and how to do it. And then, yeah, I basically learned from YouTube. And from there, I was given another task as a podcast manager for a new client. And then, yeah, it seems that I enjoyed it. And I felt that this is something that I can explore, because before, when I started my freelancing journey, I learned FB ads, website designing, and social media marketing, which I still do right now. But I incorporated in podcasting. So basically, I did a lot of things before I was able to come up with, improving my skills in the podcasting industry. So yeah, when I experienced those kinds of tasks, I gradually felt that this is not just the services or something that the client would need. Then I gradually studied, or decided to incorporate marketing for podcast, because I somehow felt that this is not the currency alone that some podcasters have. That's why, yeah, I took a course from Steve Olsher as well. That's about podcasting, and also it has been a big help that I took some, or I studied at Social Media Academy, because it taught me a lot about marketing. And yeah, I met amazing people like my colleagues at Hexabloom, specifically to Blessy Dakanay. She's the founder of Visual Brand Stylist, and she's the one who encouraged me to, to push this further. And also to my mentor, the co-founder of Social Media Academy, that's Nix Enigo. And he's the one who really taught me more about marketing and pushed me do all of these things that I do right now.
Your podcast journey starts here. Take the first step on your side. Hustle with us. It starts with a great domain. Get your podcast web host with Beard and Coffee at www.beardandcoffee.com.au or find us at Facebook.
A gender gap in a business?
Okay, I don't really feel that right now, because in our generation, I think that it's not really, or in the industry that we belong, particularly to freelancing and to the online industry, it's not an issue if you're a woman, right? And it's kind of what do you call this, I think it would be the last issue that people would take a look into, because the game that we have right now is how you would deliver, right, regardless of your gender, right? And of course you wouldn't want to work with people who are looking into to gender, right? You would work, or you would want to work with people, with your colleagues, and with the kind of community that looks into, or that look into what you can do, right, as a service provider or as an agency, right? So when it comes to gap, let me since I belong in the, or I cater to the podcasting industry, let me talk about the gap in that. Well, yes, there's a very big gap in the podcasting industry, because there are a lots of podcasters who start their show, but after months of running it, they feel exhausted, frustrated, because of the unfavorable results they get. Sometimes they pause, they stop, right, they quit. But the gap that I see is how they strategize their podcasts, not being able to identify what their real message and offer is, and also what their real target market is, right? And it's actually a big thing in podcasting, because in podcasting we record an episode as a whole, right? Sometimes we record that for an hour and it's too long, and you can extract a lot of ideas from that we repurpose on social media, and we disseminate across social media, right? So yeah, if you're recording, if the message in your recording is not spot on, right, what do you think would happen to your promotional materials that you extracted from that whole episode, right? So it's got like a domino effect. And I noticed that, especially if I do social media listening in different groups, and a lot of people are encountering that. And it's just I guess it's just normal to encounter some struggles whenever you do something new, right? But yeah, but basically that's the problem that's a problem that I want to solve in the podcasting industry. The reason why we're here is, of course, to teach people how to do it right, and to strategize their show, their podcast, to gain favorable results, right, and to identify what their needs are, because different businesses, different podcast shows definitely have different needs and wants, like human beings. And yeah, what we do as service providers is to identify what kind of illness their businesses have, or their shows have. Yeah, and also that's the reason why I like to teach and create, like a small empire of podcast service providers here in the Philippines. I want to produce high quality podcast service providers, so we can decrease the rate of podcasters being frustrated with their shows.
For other to our listener and our audience, that is especially moms, because they're still always at home. Is this they can do this?
Yes, I can definitely do this. Actually, in the podcasting industry, if you're thinking of, well, there are two things, right? Being a podcast service provider and being a podcaster. Okay, so for being a podcast service provider, podcasting actually, or the services that you can provide in podcasting is pretty big. Okay, it's not just about podcast editing, it's not just about the production, right? It's about different things. For podcast editing, of course, the production, and we also have the management, where you make sure that things are in control and things are happening, the processes, right, the strategies are in place, right, that the team is working for the weekly publish of the episode, and that the checklist of the processes are being done. And also for podcast marketing, there are lots of areas in each or subcategories in each areas, okay, because we have three main areas. That's the, like what I've mentioned, that's production, management and marketing. Because if you're not going to market your podcast, then you won't be, you won't be visible to your audience. So uh your results, it wouldn't happen. The results that you want to have, it wouldn't happen, right? So in each areas, there are also qualities of a podcast service provider, that or a person that we need. Like for example, for production or for editing, of course, those who are into or so technical, right? Those who love using different softwares, right? They can do that. For those who are into music or into audio, into video, because you also have video podcasts, right? You can also do that. And
So you want to start a podcast, or perhaps you've already started one, but you're still unclear on how you can actually make this podcasting work. No worries. That's why we're here for you. We are Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate, powered by Kangaroo Fern Media Lab. Join our network. Contact us at info@kangaroofern.com, because we're stronger together.
we use different uh, software like Audacity, Audio, or Adobe Audition, GarageBand, and there are a lot of tools that we can use there, including for video, right? Because we also use videos for promotional materials, right? And for video podcast, you also have to, have a clean presentation of your video if you do video podcast. And for management, these are the people who are really organize, right? Like organizing things into project management, because it's also like handling a whole project, right? For podcast management. But basically, some of the things that you can do for podcast management is uploading to Libsyn, podcast hosting, right? Making sure that the podcast blog is being published on time, right? Those are the basic things that you can do. But if you're really an OC person or into project management, then you can definitely be a podcast manager. And next, for podcast marketing, of course, from the word itself, these are the people who like to strategize to into marketing, right? Into promotion, right? So yeah, there are three main areas, and there are sub categories within those areas. Now, for a podcaster, if you want to be a podcaster, you can also do that for moms. Definitely yes, especially if you're at home, because it doesn't require a big production. Sometimes you can, for as long as you can find a place in your home where you can record properly, no noise, and you can definitely do that. You don't need a fancy mic. You don't need to go for the overkill. If you have like a great iPhone headset, then you can start from there. Then you can just clean it using Audacity, right? Just to spread the word. For moms, particularly, if you want to inspire the other moms, right, how to take care of their children, how to the experiences of motherhood, right? There are definitely it's a great place for you to start with as well. It doesn't require you to, put makeup on if you're kind of shy, right? Then it's a great place or a great thing to start.
We are Independent Podcast Network. We are Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate. Would you like to hear your brand while supporting quality podcasts? Contact us now at advertise@guerrillapodcastsyndicate.com.
All right. So you're saying you've been on this podcasting industry for almost 4 years now. And what do you say or advise to, say, mom who is looking at on getting into this industry? Is there any program? Is there any program from the government or any non-government organization to help moms to be an entrepreneurs just like you?
Oh, okay. I believe that there are a lot of programs that the government offers, but I'm not really sure about that. Though there's I think I'm not sure if I'm saying it right, but the Coursera, I think, and I think that's a great place to start with. And actually, not only those places, actually YouTube, YouTube is a great place to start. Right, there are a lot of things you can learn from that. I learned a lot from YouTube, especially podcast editing. I did not enroll to any courses before for podcast editing, and yeah, it's a great place to start for entrepreneurship. You can follow different people who do entrepreneurship. Even here in the Philippines, there are lots of people who do great business and are great coaches and mentors. We have Nick Sanigo for marketing. We have Melissa Perfetta. Those are very those are the coaches that we have on Social Media Academy. If you want to start your freelancing business, we have John Pagulayan, we have Carla Singson. We have a lot of people to follow here in the Philippines. You just have to maximize your resources. You just have to research on online. You just have to research on Facebook, right? So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. You can definitely learn even if you're not, even if you're not investing money yet. There are a lot of free resources online to begin with.
This podcast is brought to you by Guerrilla Podcast Syndicate, powered by Kangaroo Fern Media Lab. Kangaroo Fern is Australia's independent video and podcast management agency with a mission to help individuals and entrepreneurs to start their own podcasts and harness the power of podcasting.
As a podcast manager, you turn into a podcast strategist. So what is the difference between that two? Do you don't like anymore the podcast management, or you concentrate on the strategies now?
Okay, actually, I do all of them until now. I am a podcast editor. I am in charge also in the podcast production. I am a podcast manager still, podcast editor, podcast manager, and a podcast marketing strategist. It's just that I want to focus big time on podcast growth. That's why I'm focused on podcast marketing now, and I am building firing podcast service providers as well. I don't want to restrict myself or my group to podcast marketing strategist only, but what I'm saying is I'm focused on the growth, right? But yeah, I still handle clients right now for podcast editing. I still handle clients for podcast management, actually for all areas. I still do that for my clients. So if in case that, in case that they need this service and I know that I can do it, yeah, I'm open to it.
All right. So aside from podcast manager, you say you're editing, you're doing podcast strategies, and a podcaster as well. Can you tell us about the podcast? Why did you do that? Is that part of your strategies?
Okay, that's a great question. Actually, I was writing a blog a while ago. I was actually doing a case study. I am documenting my case study about the podcast show because there are two reasons that why I did create the podcast show. First, of course, is to prove that yes, you can earn through podcasting. You can monetize it, and you can build your brand through podcasting. That's why I did it. So basically, I am my own guinea pig in this case, right? Because there are lots of clients that you can try it with if it's your option. I'm not saying that for all service providers. If it's not your preference, then it's okay. But if your preference to do it to yourself as well, then that would be an advantage, right? But I think it would be advantageous if you can also try it to yourself, because you'll be having a better understanding, a clarity of how it really goes, the ins and outs of being a podcaster, because there's a difference between being a podcast service provider and a podcaster, right? And next, the number two reason why I did the podcast show is, of course, to put myself in my client's shoes. Because right now, when I started my podcast, I felt that I have a deeper understanding of the weight of the legwork of creating a podcast, including recording. I used to tell my clients that's actually my requirement to, record episodes in advance. And sometimes I'm frustrated and pissed off whenever they can submit the recording on time, right? Now I feel that because I experience that now, that it's sometimes because of being busy, a lot of things to do, right? Sometimes you miss to record on time, right? But the bottom line is even if you're busy, you have to always go back to your purpose, and that's to keep educating your audience. That's why, even if maybe sometimes you're being late at recording your episode, just what's important is making sure that you publish on time. So yeah, okay, my clients are gonna hate me because of that, maybe, or gonna laugh at me, but again, it's always important that you go back to your purpose, okay? And yeah, make sure that you make time in keeping up with your content and schedule.
All right, before we wrap it up, so I just had another question for you. This is for entrepreneurs, especially on the podcast industry, and also people who's trying to being a podcast manager, being a podcast editor. So, what is your advice based on your experience? Because you've been on this industry for 4 years now. What are your advice for the people who's starting up and saying, "Oh, looks like this industry is going to be booming"?
Well, I'm an advocate of, just do it and take action. So yeah, just do it, because adjustments, we can always make adjustments if things won't work, but you will not have something to adjust if you don't do anything, if you don't have results, right? Results can be bad, results can be good, but our ability to adjust is, it's a gift, it's there, so we have to maximize it, right? And next is accept rejections. I guess it's part of the game. If you felt rejected because of talking to people, to clients, right? That's normal. It's not every day that you will feel that you're lucky, or you're blessed. Sometimes pains are also blessing in disguise. So yeah, just do it, because that's gonna be a part of your journey. And in case that you're going to teach people as well to do what you're doing right now, those are the stories that will serve as lessons, or maybe even laughters, while you tell them your journey.
What is the future of PodKai? Are you looking at being a social enterprise or giving a social impact to others? So what is your vision and mission on PodKai?
Okay, well, for PodKai Media, my vision is to be the go-to person, or the go-to agency of podcasters, and to be a one-stop shop, like even voiceovers, not just management, editing, and marketing, but all, including the intro and outro, because I'm also into music. Well, obviously, that's why I have a guitar at my back. I'm into music, so it's my vision to be a one-stop shop in regards to podcasting, and also to produce huge podcasters that have great results, not only in numbers, not only in rankings, but also, of course, in earning through their podcast, and yeah, being able to convert their listeners into their buyers, or to their brand advocates, right? And also, that's for podcasters. Now, for podcast service providers, my vision as well is to um, to live by our purpose, to come from a place of help, and provide the highest quality that we can provide to the podcasters. That's it. Basically, to duplicate a lot of podcast service providers.
Is that hard to earn in podcasting? Some people they're already doing a podcasting for 1 year, but they haven't had any earning. Is that hard?
Well, actually, nothing's easy, right? Nothing's easy. We really have to work hard for the money that we are earning, right? So, to answer your question, yes, it's gonna be difficult too, especially if you don't have strategies in place. Okay. So it's gonna be a challenging thing because results will not be there in just a month, in just 3 months, 6 years, or sorry, 6 months or 1 year. Sometimes it will take years. You just have to be patient, okay? And you don't have to compare yourself to others because we have our own capacity and timing, right? Just keep what you're doing and, find your purpose. What are you really wanting to share with the world? What kind of people or what group of people do you like to talk to? What kind of solution do you like to solve, right? What kind of impact do you like to create? Because if you don't have a purpose, then it would be, you know maybe after months of doing podcast, I guess you'll quit, you'll stop if you don't have purpose. So we have to be clear with what you want to do. Okay, so there are different ways of earning. Yesterday we had a master class with a group of Nico. I discussed that with them. You can definitely earn the speed or the length, okay, of the time would also differ from which way of earning you're going to choose, right? And it would also depend on how good are you in building relationship with your clients and with your listeners, okay? Because uh, well, basically podcasting is used as a way on how you can build a deeper connection with your audience. So if you're genuine enough, if you're true enough to your listeners and to your mission, your vision, right, then it could be much easier for you to to keep up with your contents and see results, maybe not as fast as you imagine, but definitely it will give you results in time.
Thank you so much for that tips, helping tips and advice. So before we wrap up the show, before we end the show, can you tell us if our audience and listener want to have a chat with you?
Yes. For Facebook, you can connect with me at Kai Villanueva. Uh, my website is PodKai Media, and on LinkedIn, I'm also there. That's Kai Villanueva, and I'm inviting you to listen to the podcast show. If you want to grow your brand and monetize your podcast, you can definitely learn a lot of strategies and tips there. The podcast show that's available on Spotify and iTunes, also Stitcher.
Thank you so much, Kai Villanueva. So thank you for this is for another episode again. So all the information of Kai will be on our show notes. So please click at the show notes. All the links will be in the show notes. And also thank you for our guest for today, Kai Villanueva. I know you're a very busy person. Thank you for your time. Thank you so much. All the links will be on the show
Thank
notes.
you.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you, Kai.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to visit our website at www.guerrillapodcastsyndicate.com, where you can subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or via RSS, so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, rate and review this podcast and share it with your friends. You can also join the conversation with Guerrilla Space We Space R on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please consider on making a donation to help us keep making the podcast you love. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. This podcast is brought to you by AusPod Syndicate, powered by Kangaroo Fern Media Lab. Kangaroo Fern is Australia's independent video and podcast management agency with a mission to help individuals and entrepreneurs to start their own podcasts